Hello everyone and welcome back to the continuation of the match Hans Niemann versus the world. After two incredible victories against Anish Giri and Nikita Vitugo, he takes on ÉtienneBacrot of France. And, well, he's doing incredibly well. He not only broke back into the 2700 club, he is now currently ranked world number 19 on the live ratings list. But we're going to discuss that and a little bit about the match after we check out this game. So this is game 6 of Classical, and it's the same as in all the other matches that Hans played. He goes into Blitz next and then into Rapid in the end. So let's check it out. Hans with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. Etienne replies with the Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6, and pawn to d4. We have captures, and now knight to c6. We have knight to c3 and queen to c7, the Bacrot variation of the Taimanov Sicilian. Could be very, very tricky to play against this with white. At least for me, I prefer to play against, well, many of the other lines of the Sicilian. This one I always, struggle with. Bishop to e3, we have pawn to a6, and now queen to d2 is the top move. Hans goes for queen to f3. This is the fourth most popular continuation, but also fairly common. We have pawn to b5, preparing to dislodge the knight right away and then put some pressure on that e4 pawn. And the game has been reached before. It is an own position. For example, queen g3. David Navarra played this against ÉtienneBacrot himself. So maybe Hans knew about this game when he was preparing the line. It was played last year and their game ended in a draw. But here Hans plays knight captures on c6. We have queen captures and bishop to d3, adding another defender here if the knight is dislodged. And bishop to b7 does make sense here. Etienne first goes for pawn to h5. That's a very useful pawn to have. Knight f6, knight to g4 will put pressure on the dark square bishop. Again, a fairly standard idea. And most games that reach this position, castles was played. There is one game Robert Zelčić played against Doric where he castled kingside in 2021 in Croatian Championship and he lost that game. But here we have pawn to a4 by Hans going after the b5 pawn, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So okay, pawn to b4, of course, it's what you were planning to play either way. Knight back to b1 and knight to f6, continuing to put pressure on that e4 pawn, knight to d2 and bishop to b7. So Etienne can be very happy with black here. He has very natural development and has a clear target and an idea of what to do this game. We have castles and bishop to queen to c7. So the queen removes itself from this diagonal, and okay, now the question is how to continue here. You could also, well, first play knight to g4 before playing queen to c7 to also put pressure on the h2 pawn, but then it would be met with bishop to f4 right away. And you could also meet queen to c7 with bishop to f4. It does look like a very annoying thing to do. Probably Etienne's plan was something like bishop to d6, and then you force a trade of bishops and you continue having queen on this diagonal, knight to g4 always being a threat. But Hans just plays pawn to h3. He says, I'm not interested in bishop to f4. And now if you go knight g4 here perhaps appears interesting, but after you capture, there's just queen g3 and no checkmate, you're just down material. I know you guys were thinking about that. But okay, after h3, pawn to d5, striking in the center, as one always should, and bishop to d4. I always say when you manage to play pawn to d5 in the Sicilian, you're already equalized, but here it's kind of a different situation. You still have to move the bishop, you still have to castle if you are castling kingside at all, and it's hard to say who the opening of the center really favors. We have bishop to d4 by Hans and pawn to e5, challenging the bishop. We have queen to g3, pinning the e5 pawn, and bishop to d6. Okay, he was going to play that either way, so makes sense, but he gives up the g7 pawn now that the queen is on g3. So queen captures on g7, king to e7, and now queen back to g5. And this is a most interesting position. One move that you probably are wondering about is e captures on d4. Well, if you play this, you just lose on the next move, e5, and there's no defense. Whatever you play, like bishop captures on e5, rook a to e1, and everything now falls. This falls, the black king gets checkmated. There's nothing to even try here. Like you could go after the queen, rook captures on e5 with check, king d7, queen captures on f6, and already you're down a full knight. And not only that, the black king is on the run, and there is zero counterplay for black here. So what you should do is play rook 8 to g8 right away. I will show it because it's a lot of fun, and then the queen moves to h4. So now you play d captures on e4, and once white gives up a piece, bishop captures on e4, e captures on d4, and rook to a1. Rook a to e1. Now you have to play bishop to c8. And interestingly, there are no great discoveries here. Okay, you can play bishop f5, the game continues, but there is no killer move here. But Etienne played pawn to h4 first. He took away the h4 square from the Hans's queen, and he prepares a rook 8 to g8 on the next move, but now Hans just plays pawn to f4. Okay, rook 8 to g8 goes after the queen, and queen to f5, and now rook to h5. It seems that he's out of the woods. The queen has nowhere to go, or maybe it does. I'm not going to spoil it for you. For those of you who still haven't seen it, feel free to pause the video and try to find the only way for Hans to continue this game with advantage while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on realizing that there is no other way than to sacrifice the queen. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is f captures on e5. There are many different ways you could sacrifice your queen. You could also capture on h5, you could capture on f6. But interestingly, queen captures on f6, although very nice, doesn't do all that much. King e7, you can capture on d6, queen captures, and that's pretty much all there is. You can play pawn to e5, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So Hans played f captures on e5. This is by far the best move. Rook captures on f5 and e captures on d6 with check. Queen captures and the rook captures on f5. And now this is much different. The knight is hanging, so you don't have time to just do whatever. You have to move the knight, or you should move the knight, something like knight to d7, and then after e5 attacking the queen, queen g6 attacks the rook and also threatens checkmate. And once you stop that, okay, the game continues, something like queen to g3. Now you get the knight into the game, you bring the other rook into the game, and so on. But Etienne preferred rook captures on g2 check to go after the white king with queen to g3. Says, okay, if you can sacrifice the queen, of course I can sacrifice the rook. We have king captures, queen to g3 with check, king to f1, and queen captures on h3. And now king to e1. King to e2 is much stronger, but it's a practical game, a practical position. Of course, you cannot know such things. But knight captures on e4 is where Etienne really crumbled. With d captures on e4, it's still possible to play this. And I know you guys don't like it when I go too deep into the position, but I only showed the lines that are really exceptional. So look at this one. D captures on e4. This is what would keep black in the game. Bishop captures on f6, of course. We have king to d7, only move to remain in the game. And now after bishop captures on e4, now the rook is defended, you capture on e4, and now you cannot capture back because the rook here is hanging. You have to move the rook back, and now after, let's say, queen e3 check, king to f1, and bishop to d5. Okay, the game continues. Black will be able to survive this. Something like rook to e1 goes after the queen. If queen h3 check, king e2, queen to g4 check. And now whether black can continue checking the white king or not, maybe the white king just escapes up the board. The engine says objectively it's a draw, but of course this does not look like a draw. So okay, king. What I'm saying is that Hans is the one playing for the win here. Etienne can maybe hope for a draw with perfect play. But he played knight captures on e4, and now Hans plays bishop captures on e4, d captures on e4, and here Hans just played rook to e5 with check, and he was in this position on move 28 that ÉtienneBacrot resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Or, so it seems. It's a very tricky position. Much safer would be to just play rook to f2, and I'm guessing Etienne would also resign here. The reason why this is maybe not so decisive is that with perfect play, you could make life very annoying for your opponent. I will show it again because I really like it. After king to d7, how do you continue? Okay, you're going to play knight to f1. You have to guard the e3 square, prevent pawn to e3. Now comes the move that Etienne probably, you know, I'm pretty sure he was just disgusted with the game altogether because the match was pretty bad for him. He finished without a single win. He drew all of his games with white, and he lost all of his games with black. Whereas Hans, of course, won all of his games with white and drew all of his games with black. So yeah, Hans wins the match 4.5 to 1.5. And but here it would be interesting if he found pawn to f6. Point being that the rook now has to move away from the e-file, and after rook to h5, which is the only move that keeps Hans advantageous, now pawn to e3. And now look at this, rook to h7 with check, king to e8, and now you play rook, captures on b7, you even take the bishop, now pawn to e2. Beautiful stuff. And now if you capture, queen to g2 check, picks up the rook on b7, and okay, it's still white that plays for the win, but white can just play rook to b8 with check, sidestep this, and now capture on e2. And now it's two rooks, a bishop, and a knight versus a queen and a passed pawn already on h4. There's the other passed pawn. It's a completely crazy position where maybe miraculously somehow Etienne can save this. I'm just saying, you know, if it was maybe the beginning of the match, he would not resign in that position, but yeah, he already you know, he probably resigned well before move 28. So yeah, brilliant stuff by Hans, winning the match against Anish Giri, winning against Nikita Vityugov, and now on a great path, taking down ÉtienneBacrot. I mean, who is in his prime, I believe, in 2000 and I don't know when, like maybe 2005. Etienne was a top 10 player. He was, I believe, world number 9 with something like 2750 or something like that. So really, really impressive. And yeah, like I said, Hans is now world number 19. His live rating is 2733. And if he continues this, we could very, very soon have a top 10 player, Hans Niemann. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nice queen sacrifice by Hans. Very, very nice match all in all. Looking forward to the other games. I would like to thank Michael Bowers, Carmen Polifronio, Robert Stedelman, Jack Mehoff, and GroznyChessFestival.org.gg for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.